Oh, I saw it. I saw it. It's working now. What did you do? It's different. Okay.
Good evening. My name is Mike Wickers, Mayor of the great city of Cottonwood Heights. Today is Tuesday, August 15th, 2023, and this is the Cottonwood Heights City Council Business Meeting. I have asked our Public Works Director, Matt Shipp, if he would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance to get started. Thank you, Matt. Item 3 on our agenda this evening is a city council committee report. So this is once a month, we give the city council a 3-minute period to discuss what they've been working on or anything that they want to talk about with their district or citywide. So we're going to start this evening with our city councilman from District 3, Sean Newell.
Good evening, everyone. I don't have an awful lot to report since everything went great with the Butlerville days, and I've had to miss it. I was doing something else that I do on the side. I have a couple of things I wanted to just kind of point out. This weekend, we had a great event from the folks from the Autism Council of Utah. It was an event that allowed families to come out and to spend some time with our fire department, Unified Fire, our police department, and members of our council here and staff. It was a great event. It was wonderful to see so many residents come out. And I hope that the event continues to grow and we continue to allow people to understand that, the city really cares about all of our residents and having them participate with each other. I had also an opportunity last week to go to an ice cream social in my area, actually in the mayor's area as well, which was another opportunity for engagement. I'm really looking for those opportunities to get out and engage all of our residents and have great discussions and find out some of the desires that you have for our city. As you are residents and we're here for you. And that's one of the most important things that we can do is to have that continuous engagement. If you look out here in the foyer, there's some artwork. I also serve on the Arts Council for the city, and we're really interested in getting submissions from artists, especially local artists that are here that want to display their artwork here at City Hall. I mean, there's a lot of people that come through here like yourselves, they get a chance to see their artwork. So if you're an artist or you know of artists, please ask them to, consider submitting artwork here to the city as well. Other than that, we've got a couple of events. I'm sure the mayor will talk about some of those events that are coming up. And from there, I'm going to turn it over to, good timing, to someone else to speak.
Thank you, Sean. Appreciate that. Next from District 1, Councilmember Matt Holton.
Thank you, Mayor. Had an interesting meeting yesterday with the mosquito abatement folks. Never thought I'd say those words in my entire life. But there's an interesting case of West Nile virus in Utah County. It looks like there was one case. It looks like they were saying it came up from Utah County. So I never knew exactly how important mosquito abatement was. Obviously, no one likes the annoying bites and the itch, but there's a lot of diseases that are carried by mosquitoes. And just to give you some perspective, so a 5-year average of traps that our district, mosquito abatement district, puts in place was 32,684. And then this year through July, 71,081. So more than double the amount of traps. I think we can probably equate that to or connect that with a very wet winter that we had. It's all about standing water and making sure that there are not those areas where mosquitoes can place the eggs and hatch. So 71,000 traps, which is pretty amazing. Utah was one of the first states or our district in the country who's taking on a new system. And this system, basically they fog an area, and what they've done or what they have found is they place some buckets, they get a big garbage can and they place a little bit of water in the very bottom, and they place some of these mosquitoes. and it's got a ton of things blocking. It's got trash, it's got wood, it's got tarps. And this method that they're using has shown that it actually does go all the way down to the very bottom and does go after those eggs. So our district is actually going to, I'm not, but our folks at the district are going to Montana to share this method around the country, which has been super successful here locally. As far as parks go, still involved with Crestwood. There's a lot of activities there that the county wants to do. Engaging with them. There's more information to come. It's a little too early to kind of share some of the plans or some of the plans that we want to propose. But we'll share those at a future meeting. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Matt. From Council District 2, Councilmember Scott Bracken.
John actually said a lot of what I wanted to. I was gonna make a comment coming Saturday and having a couple hundred people here with the Autism Council of Utah was actually really great to have the police, the fire, the families. It was a really good turnout. I think it was really successful. And really appreciate the police, fire, other first responders reaching out. And the people, families who register their loved ones in that system so that if a first responder call gets made, that gets dispatched to them. I know that helps the officers responding. It would help any of the EMS that happens to be going there as well. And I also appreciate the police showing up to our summer events. There's a lot of active neighborhoods in the city, and they try to get out there. I know the 4th of July is a busy day for them. But they do a good job. The Wasatch Front Waste and Recycling District postponed their July meeting, so next one is not going to be until the end of this month. So not much progress there. I believe they said they finished the Anzac Park installation of the new playground there. They have Bywater and Hollow Mill Parks that are both also scheduled to be done this summer. With the rec center, the Cottonwood Heights Square committee that I serve on. We work with them just to make sure that we're talking back and forth. And that we're supporting each other. Their board has always been supportive of the city, and we've always been supportive. They're integral in doing a lot of the events that we have in the city. Bark in the Park is coming up. The end of this month, we have Monster Mash that'll be coming up just before Halloween. And without them, we'd have a hard time getting that done. We had a meet the candidates last night. There were 5 candidates that are running for districts 1 and 2. We had a really good turnout. There was a lot of good conversations held. I did shift my table a little bit because the sun comes right in that window, and I talked to our city manager about getting that fixed so people can sit in that room without having the sun in their eyes. But it's always good to have the citizens come out, ask questions, find out what's going on. It was a successful event. My ballots arrived today, so anybody in District 2, time to open those up and decide what we're going to do in November. The Youth Council put in about 180 hours of volunteer work at. You didn't let it go beat. I don't know, I'm going over. They put in about 180 hours of volunteer work at Butlerville Days. Some of them that barely went home for those 3 days. We're having an end of summer social this week, but working with the high school kids, doing the social, the education, and the service stuff that we do is one of the best parts of my responsibility.
Thanks, Scott. From Council District 4, Councilmember Ellen Burrell.
Thank you. I had a town hall meeting just under a week ago. We had about 35 people who attended, and they gave me a lot of good input. our mayor was willing to share about winter mitigation for our eastern side of our city. The traffic, of course, related to the peak hours that can be a real problem for residents getting in and out of their neighborhoods, as well as just, general traffic problems there especially where Fort Union meets Wasatch Boulevard. And so I know they really appreciated further Q&A on that. Our representative Galen Benyon came and spoke about short-term rentals. She's actively doing legislation in that area, as well as in corridor preservation, I should say riparian corridor preservation at the state level. We also kind of took a poll, what was on the pulse on the minds. We brought up about 12 different subjects, and it was interesting to me that in District 4, the water rights, which are currently being adjudicated by the state engineer's office. It's been quite an education for me over the last several months. I've come to find out that in 1940, the state of Utah decided that we needed to adjudicate water rights, and that process has been going on ever since. But it is coming to a termination supposedly at the end of this calendar year, so that residents, especially who have creeks that flow through their yards and this and that, were quite interested in that. So I also found that of great interest. So that was on the top, one of the top interests for them, as well as trail access is on their minds. Those of you who are hikers, preserving our ability to get on trails such as the Death's Canyon Trail. That was a high priority to those present. Of course, safety on the streets, on our streets for all users was of intense interest. And I also got a phone call from a constituent who had been traveling, and she came home after 3 weeks away to find that her a pipe had burst in her yard. Exactly, I know it was external, but at any rate, it gushed out so many gallons of water in the time that she was gone. Sadly, none of her neighbors noticed it. And so the Salt Lake Public Utilities sent her a bill for $4,800. So I thought it was worth bringing up to everyone present who's a homeowner that there is a program that Salt Lake Public Utilities offers where you can have them put an alarm system, so to speak. And I'm sorry, I don't have the exact terminology, but should you have water that's real exceptional, like you can say, gee, if 500 gallons flows in a day, shut me off. So anyways, I just thought, and I'm going to be talking to our city manager, and we can look into this. I think it would be a great public service to remind all of us that when you are away, there is a way to control should you have some kind of unforeseen leak, that the public utilities can shut that off. And then I also wanted to mention that the historical committee that I serve on as liaison at our last meeting had 2 guests speak from Brighton High School. And I really want to commend the Historical Society for looking to collaborate more with teachers and staff at the high school and heighten participation in programs with that. So thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. Appreciate it. So I, as mayor, sit on the board of trustees for Unified Fire Authority, our fire department. We have 2 stations within our city boundaries. We have Station 110 on Fort Union Boulevard, and then we have Station 116 up on Wasatch Boulevard. One of the things that has been a priority for Unified in the last 18 months has been to get out into the community more. And hopefully, if you've been to Butlerville Days, community activities, if you have a neighborhood party and invite them, they'll make every effort to go and to be seen more in the community, to understand that they are part of who we are as residents of Conwood Heights. One of the things that has changed in the last, just in the last couple of weeks, All of our Unified Fire Authority fire personnel now wear the Cottonwood Heights logo and patch on their uniform. So you won't just see a Unified Fire Authority on one sleeve. You'll now see Cottonwood Heights identifying them as firefighters who work in our community. So, which is really cool. You know, the last thing that I wanted to say was just how appreciative I am for the public engagement that our citizens have within this city. You know, in the last 6 weeks, I've attended 3 different town halls that our council has put on. And we've had great engagement and people coming out to express their opinions and to let people know how invested they are within our city. The Meet the Candidates night that has been talked about yesterday was a great success. Multiple people coming to want to learn who's running for open seats and to be invested. And it can go on and on. You think about Butlerville Days, and we've had so many different opportunities to gather as a community and to become invested. And we live in an amazing place with people that care and that want the city to stay and even become greater. So I just wanted to thank our residents for that. So item 4 on our agenda this evening is a citizen comment period. This is a time for citizens to address the council concerning whatever matters they desire. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to speak. Please review the public comment procedures on the last page of tonight's agenda. If you haven't already filled out a speaker comment card, please do so and hand it to a staff member who can bring it up to me. When making citizen comments, we request that you speak into the microphone, you state your name clearly, and that your comments can be recorded. And we ask that you refrain from insulting language or comments as well. The audience should also avoid expressions of support or disagreement so that everyone will feel comfortable expressing their thoughts. The council's here to listen, but you also shouldn't expect to engage in a back and forth dialogue. When the 3 minutes is up, you'll hear a buzzer, and we ask at that point that you have about 4 or 5 seconds left if you're not finished to finish your statement. So this public comment citizen comment period is different from the public comment period for our SLEDS ordinance. So that will come actually as our next item of business. So we'll start with the regular citizen comment period, and we'll invite Dawn Smart to come up. Hi, Dawn.
I want to and the reason why I asked that question is because you chose that neighborhood probably the same as I did, because of the peacefulness of it, the opportunity of spending time with your family, and not being concerned about any outside influences and just enjoying that special time with your family. When we find ourselves in Cottonwood Heights up against a challenge of pickleball courts right in our neighborhood, and in fact, in our backyard. My backyard connects to about 6 other homes. And for that reason, it becomes very significant to make sure that each one of the neighbors have respect. When you think of the pickleboard, if you've ever played pickleball, there's 2 issues. Number 1 is the sound. And that sound is constant between the paddle, the ball, and then hitting the ground. And also the lights that it takes to use it in the evening as well as in the morning. I'm completely in agreement of wanting to do things on your own property. But with pickleball, you can't contain the sound, you cannot contain the lights. And so it becomes truly a neighborhood issue. And for that reason, that's the reason why that I wanted to take just another brief moment and talk about the importance of looking to the council to really protect us as neighbors in the Cottonwood Heights area. People who have experienced the pickleball play in their area have found it to be extremely annoying. The word is they're beside themselves to hear that constant sound and then have to deal with the lights. Neighbors have had to put cardboard in their windows to protect that light so that they would not be offended by that. Also, the sound is just constant. And so that's why we're really pleading with each one of you to be able to help us with that. We do have an HOA, but the HOA wants to support what the city dictates. And for that reason, we really plead with each one of you to really take that in consideration so that we don't have the same problem that others have by being beside themselves. We have found that those who play pickleball are so focused on what they're doing that they really forget the needs of the neighbor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Don. Appreciate that. Dan Egan. Hi, Dan.
Good evening. Thank you. I'm also here. I'm Dan Egan. I reside in the Willowbrook Farm subdivision on the south side of the city. I'm here to talk about pickleball courts as well. There's a void in the city's ordinances on this topic. And I'm probably not telling you anything you don't know. But there's little direction that we have to deal with this issue. And the little direction there is seems to be limited in the city's ordinances, at least, to lighting. Its intensity and its placement. So the placement of these facilities in private neighborhoods, as opposed to in public areas like parks and schools, I think deserves the prompt and urgent attention from the city. Noise and light penetrating beyond lot boundaries and onto neighboring properties is a real concern. Affected parties are left to complain to neighbors or to the neighborhood HOA, and friendships and a sense of community are being left behind as parties struggle to play or to protect themselves from the adverse impact of others' play. Currently, we only have the Salt Lake County's noise rule to establish a baseline limitation with respect to noise, but even a casual reading of that rule indicates that it was not intended or doesn't contemplate outdoor private sports facilities or the repetitive nature of the sounds that are involved. We need better and more specific guidance for private outdoor sports facilities. And that, I believe, is your job. I urge you to take into account the effects of noise and light, the hours of use, and the proximity, of course, to neighboring property lines. There are examples of other cities that have dealt with this issue. Park City, for example, has adopted an ordinance that you might consider as a guide. It may also be appropriate to require a minimum acreage requirement for the placement of pickleball courts on a private residential lot. Finally, I would ask you to take serious consideration about whether pickleball courts should even be allowed in private residential subdivisions as opposed to public locations. I have nothing against pickleball. I love pickleball players. I have friends and neighbors who are pickleball players. I just think that we need to be more careful about how we administer this in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate that. Renee Kundick. Hi, Renee.
Thanks for this opportunity. My name is Renee Kundick. My husband and I both went to Brighton High School, and I have 3 boys that went to Brighton High School, and we chose to live in Cottonwood Heights because we love the area. We own our home at 2198 East Laredo Way, and I, along with several of my neighbors, are very concerned with a new trend to add pickleball courts to quiet, private residential areas, turning them into recreational spaces with rotating leagues, lessons, and hourly rentals that travel in and out of our neighborhoods, bringing noise, traffic, and other nuisances. Over the past 12 months, we have been directly impacted by this, as our neighbors behind us, whose property directly parallels ours, have been doing construction on a pickleball court. We reside in an HOA, and our CCNR's Article 1, Item 11 states that all game courts shall be located to avoid impacting adjacent properties with lighting and sound. Furthermore, Item 19 states no noxious or offensive activity should be carried out upon the lot, nor shall anything be done which will be of annoyance or nuisance to the neighborhood. I, along with several neighbors, have reached out to Cottonwood Heights City on numerous occasions for direction on city ordinances that would aid in the prevention of turning our quiet neighborhood into a noisy recreational area, to no avail. Both my husband and I have home offices and both work from home on Eastern time zone. Lighting and sound generated from a pickleball court will greatly impact our working and resting hours, which in turn will impact our health. It has already happened with the construction. It has been well documented that noise from a pickleball court in an open park environment hitting the court and pedals consistently reaches 70 decibels. However, this level is greatly increased when in an enclosed space, echoing off the close proximity of structures. And furthermore, that noise level doesn't even take into account cheering or other noises made by players and spectators. 55 decibels is the level that is allowed in Salt Lake County in a residential area. Pickleball greatly exceeds that perimeter. After consulting several fence and sound professionals, there is no fence that will block or muffle any of the sounds that reverberate from a court, as the proximity of our homes will cause the sound to echo exponentially off of all the structures and amplify the noise. Clearly, this is a nuisance to all neighbors and residents surrounding the court and will greatly disrupt our lives. Cottonwood Heights city officials need to have clear ordinances in place to protect our neighborhoods, to keep them peaceful areas for its residents. And we pay our hard-earned money and taxes for well-kept designated recreational areas for the residents to use. And pickleball courts need to be kept out of our residential areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Renee. Mark McDonald.
Good evening. Thank you for your time. Park City Planning Commission approved new land management code amendments surrounding outdoor pickleball courts in residential areas on Wednesday night. Pickleball is exploding in popularity, and City Hall has been feeling the pressure to meet the growing demand. The Park City Recreation Department is currently working on a request for proposal to reconsider the scope and construction costs of new outdoor pickleball courts at the Park City Mark, as well as possible outdoor pickleball courts at Quinn's Junction Sports Complex. Due to the unique noise produced as part of pickleball play, city staff recommended the Planning Commission implement new land use regulations for outdoor pickleball courts in residential areas to address noise and other impacts. Number one, the minimum lot size for an outdoor pickleball court in Park City is 1 acre. Establish a minimum setback of 600 feet from lot lines of adjacent residential property lines. The Planning Commission can reduce the setback to no less than 150 feet if an applicant submits a noise study and implements noise mitigation features. They've given Renee a couple of inches. My HOA has submitted a application for that pickleball court. And it's pathetic. They didn't follow the guidelines that I have as a property owner that Renee articulated to you. Park City wants 600 feet. Cottonwood Heights, as it is now, wants 6 inches. It's horrible that I'd have neighbors that would want to impact people like Don Smart and Renee. Let's do something about it. Let's get some sensible restrictions to this noise predicament, you know, to these homes and residences, and do it quickly, but do not pass this. I'm saying do not pass this HOA thing that was sent in by Willowbrook subdivision until we've got this thing all ironed out. Because there's no way that a pickleball court should ever be put where they intend to put it. And lastly, let me just read just if I can, just for a couple of seconds, please. One Park City resident says it's too hot to play pickleball in the middle of the summer. So people are playing pickleball in the evenings where there's noise and particularly light conditions, because it's too hot. So they're affecting the people at home that want to go out and sit on their back porch and have a barbecue or something. I'm done.
Thank you. Jen Cottam.
Good evening. I'm Jen Cottam. So I went to the business meeting today where we discussed the Bengal and Highland Drive and really like the plans and I'm happy with where it's going. But I wanted to put it in perspective from the neighborhood coming from the west to the east. So at the light, driving up the hill, basically. I'm sure that if you've come from that neighborhood, you recognize that as people are trying to make a left-hand turn who are coming down the hill, they see the green light and they think go, and they don't see people coming straight. I don't know. Yeah, okay. So it's something like I've almost been hit on in my car, which is bad enough, but I've really almost been hit on my bike a lot. And my favorite is when they flip me off after they almost hit me. So as this is redesigned, I think it's a great opportunity to either put in a turn, maybe a flashing yellow light to remind them you're yielding to oncoming traffic, or to give them just a green arrow. So that was my main concern. And then my secondary concern, Councilwoman Burrell mentioned coming down the hill and going straight. Well, she was talking about a left-hand turn. But if you're going down the hill and going straight into Park Ridge, so Bengal turns to Park Ridge, that's been fairly treacherous for me as well. So if I'm going down the hill, people get to continue pretty quickly right. And if you're going straight, a lot of times they'll try to cut you off because it's designed for that. So just kind of maybe thinking about that. I talked to the engineer afterwards and he mentioned that if you're on the multi-use path going west, that as you come through the lot, you wouldn't go through the lot, you would continue onto Highland, and then you would kind of come up the come up. I'm not sure if it's going to be a multi-use path there. So if you would have to bike on the sidewalk and then cross, or how that's going to be mitigated. So just as you're looking at the designs, kind of do that with that in mind. So thank you.
And I agree. I was just going to say, I agree. I think there's a lot of people that try to gun that intersection.
Yeah.
And at a minimum, I do like that they're at least trying to slow down the traffic, because it is a pretty dangerous intersection.
Yeah. I think we've all seen some pretty hairy accidents there. So.
Mayor,
Thank
if I can just, you can go ahead and sit down, but
Oh, okay.
It-
Thanks.
one of the things that design kind of necessitates is a split phase, at least the conceptual, which would mean the left turns coming down the hill would be going at a different time than the ones up the hill, which should help a lot of, because I use the intersection consistently as well. When someone's a pedestrian's crossing or something like that, they're hard to see. You don't know which way the cars are coming up. That's something that we need. That was one of the first thing I looked at when I snuck into Matt's office Friday on something else, and I says, oh, by the way, can you show me this? But that was the top of the list, is to make sure the Park Ridge traffic is being taken care of.
Thank you, Drew Tidwell. Hi.
Hi, how are you? I'm Drew Tidwell. I've lived in Cottonwood Heights for 18 years, and I do share the feeling that it is a special place. I moved here for the vicinity to the Wasatch and, feel really, pleased with the area. But I just wanted to mention the Hillside Plaza, that I'm looking forward to participating in feedback to the city and the city council and all of you. I'm hoping to be included in the steering committee for that process, but I also want to ask that you consider multiple layers of input. So I know you said you've hired a consultative group to give you some professional advice there. And I know that you're considering the steering committee as well. But I would ask that you consider a couple more ways to get input and to create a robust and thoughtful dialogue around what is happening there, because I view it as a really important future city center, a place that people can feel inclusive, that they're included in the community and that they can relax and enjoy amenities, and that it will belong to all of us. So I just, want to bring this up early in the game and really ask that we do careful consideration on community input with this project, because I feel it's at the heart of our city. Thank you.
Thanks, Drew.
I didn't even use my time.
Thank you. Bob Jacobs. Hi, Bob.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Bob Jacobs. I live in Alta Hills. I've been there 47 years. So I just wanted to talk about the solution that's being proposed for Lower Cottonwood Canyon. It started out as a pretty promising endeavor to make that road the way we wanted it to be, low traffic, low speeds. It's nothing like that. We're going to have a 2,500 car parking garage at the far end of our city. So I just wanted to propose a little thing here that I thought handled it a lot better. I start out with our original plan of a 2,500 car parking garage in the gravel pit rather than at the end of the road, and make the gravel pit a real transportation hub with UTA bus routes, express buses, tracks, Uber, maybe even promoted by the ski resorts, subsidized by the ski resorts to get people to the hub. Have buses leave from the gravel pit, go up Big Cottonwood or Little Cottonwood Canyon. And they preferably would even be free, maybe. I mean, we're saving $1 billion, over $1 billion. Maybe make the buses free. And the way to address the other issues is they're talking about a 6-lane highway going nowhere. People going to Alta and Snowbird, if they're in their car, they come up 9400 South. They can't even travel on Wasatch Boulevard to get there. Southbound traffic on Wasatch Boulevard can get all the way to the end of the road, but then all they can do is turn west onto 9400 South. So all the local traffic and everything's just like it is now. Buses can move right down there. There's no backed up traffic. So the buses leaving from the gravel pit can move right down there. There'll be a bus lane at the entrance to the canyon, and you're right up the canyon. So it eliminates the traffic problem on Wasatch Boulevard. I'm not sure how all that traffic ends up on Wasatch Boulevard anyway, as opposed to 9400 South. Where are all those people coming from? They're coming from downtown and the west side of town, and they're coming over here to get on Wasatch to go there. It makes a lot more sense. Get off 215 on Highland, go to 9400 and go up the road to, so all the car traffic is on 9400 south. It's a solution that doesn't involve any additional costs. We're not going to have to widen Wasatch Boulevard. All that land that they're going to use to widen it, we can use for open space, bike paths, pedestrian paths.
Thanks, Bob.
Thanks.
Appreciate your,
I understand you that's going to be here, so if this all makes any kind of sense, I don't know.
thank you, Bob. Okay, Tim, anything else online that we need to read in?
No, I have some comments for the next public comment period, but not for the general comment.
Okay, great. So at this point, I'll close our regular scheduled 4.0 citizen comment period. Item 5.0 on our agenda this evening, it brings us to item 5.1, which is the city council will receive public comment on the proposed sensitive lands evaluation and development standards ordinance that's being considered. I'm going to have our community and economic development director, Mike Johnson, come up and just give some background before we open up the comment period.
Thank you, Mayor. The many that have been following along, this information will not be new, but just because we've gotten some public comments and we are aware there are some people here tonight interested in this item, I'm just going to give a brief overview of what's been most recently presented to the council, which focuses on after the February town hall meeting, some of the feedback we got on the proposed riparian protection standards, and then some language regarding the DRC, what changes have been made. So I'll run through that very quickly and then leave plenty of time for public comment. But just as taking a big step back, just to quick give an overview of where this has been. This technical staff review of the sensitive lands ordinance, which is an ordinance that currently exists in city code. So this whole thing is not brand new. A lot of it is existing. A lot of it's not being proposed to change at all. But we have gone through and updated a number of things. But the technical staff review and update began in 2019 with the primary purpose to update all standards to the highest and best practice for identifying, studying, and mitigating hazards in the city, particularly during new development activities. This ordinance, development is in the name of it. It focuses and emphasizes mitigating the impact to and of natural hazards during development activities. So for many of the provisions in this ordinance, development activity is the kind of the trigger for the regulations. Recommendations throughout the ordinance came from the list of experts here, but this is just to illustrate this was not developed in a vacuum. We went out to our consulting engineering partners. We went to FEMA, the Army Corps of Engineers, Utah Geological Survey, experts in their fields related to all of the various hazards that are regulated by this ordinance. Formal discussion and public hearings began in 2022, early 2022 with the Planning Commission and continued throughout that year. Slide keeps changing, sorry. Throughout that year until in August, the Planning Commission voted 4-3 to recommend approval to the City Council, at which point the council began discussing. Numerous updates were made subsequent to that recommendation by the Planning Commission based on Planning Commission feedback, based on continued discussion with members of the public, based on the town hall meeting, based on discussion with council members. So this has changed quite a bit since even the Planning Commission voted on it. And I have noted here ongoing council discussion and town hall meeting in February, which was well attended, provided additional feedback, particularly to the riparian protection standards being proposed. So since Planning Commission, this is a very general overview of what's been changed since the Planning Commission voted on this. There's been language and clarification made regarding the sensitive lands review procedure. We had previously proposed a slightly different review process for sensitive land scoping studies when a development is about to occur and a piece of property needs to be scoped to determine is there a fault line on it? What risk does the steep slope provide? Is there groundwater on the property? It looks a lot of different ways, but there's language in the ordinance for how those things need to be studied and a process for that. We had changed it. The feedback was, hey, actually the language is pretty good as it was, so we changed it back. So this is a change, but actually just a reversion to the language as we use it today. We've also added language in clarifying that anywhere in the ordinance where it refers to the city or staff making a decision, that all runs through the city's development review committee, which is also defined in the ordinance. It's a committee made up of various staff members, department heads. We've added some language in there that the city council will vote on the makeup of that committee at least once a year. And then any DRC meeting held will take detailed minutes or recordings of each meeting that are then available for review by staff afterwards, but also public documents and accessible to the public. We have updated and modified kind of continuously the riparian protection standards as they've been proposed. The largest change came as a result of some public comment early on and then the town hall meeting that was held back in February. But basically the modified ordinance now, which has been sent out and to residents and published online, basically splits the regulations into two categories. One is as it applies to residential properties, and I say residential being low density, all single family zones, but also I think our residential office zone, which is a lower density commercial zoning, and also the R2, so the twin home, the two family zone, which is still low density, but two units per lot. A lot of the things previously that were standards and restrictions for development in those areas are now recommendations. So we've put aside kind of residential, single family, largely existing development, and we've included language in there that is recommendation, advisory in nature, but much less restrictive, only restrictive in a few ways as it pertains to storage of debris, compost areas and other waste materials that we got feedback from Salt Lake County Flood Control is really important to keep away from these waterways. Otherwise, in those residential areas, the standards basically now say, hey, if you needed a permit from Salt Lake County Flood Control, just provide the city a copy of your permit and you're okay to do your development activity. And then we have another set of standards that's for commercial, high density, more intense redevelopment, where a lot of those, that is development that is largely yet to occur at new development areas where we anticipate, more dense, intense land uses. Often in those areas, largely around Big Cottonwood Creek, there are redevelopment tools like the Planned Development District that will allow for, a landowner or developer to propose really unique context sensitive developments, but really with quite a bit more density than you can see in other areas of the city. So, a fair trade-off to some of the potential zoning tools that those areas is, hey, let's make sure we're still mitigating from the waterways, and typically higher density commercial development is more intense, does require or is recommended to have a more of a buffer from the waterway areas in order to protect them. So again, in a high level manner of speaking, we now have advisory recommendations for residential areas, only a few restrictions, again, as they relate to woody debris and compost areas. And we have still some of those similar standards for impending future commercial redevelopment that we may see. We feel the balance is fair though, because like I said, those commercial development areas have tools available to them to really make the most out of their property in a future redevelopment. We've also clarified elsewhere in the ordinance, there was some discussion on slope disturbance language, and we had written in Wasatch Boulevard as a cutoff point for where exceptions can be approved and where they cannot. And we have better defined Wasatch Boulevard now to mean the state roads, because we do have a city road also named Wasatch Boulevard. So that clarification has also been made. A majority of the amendment work since February, though, has been to that riparian protection area. I may just stop there. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer those. We have received a couple public comments that have now both been forwarded to the council. One just forwarded earlier in this meeting. One you received last week. I've read through the comments proposed by the resident last week. Many of them are reasonable, and I think I agree with many of them, and they meet the intent of the ordinance. So we'll be working on incorporating some of those comments into another updated ordinance, but I don't feel that they change the intent or the provisions in the ordinance greatly. Any questions?
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. I'll actually add before we open up the public comment period on this issue. The city's lobbyist organization, the League of Cities and Towns, updated us yesterday on they monthly we get an update on from what the legislature is working on. And one of the items that we were informed of yesterday is they're working on requiring cities to pass a riparian ordinance. And that would come from the state legislature. So that would be a state law that cities would have to adhere to. And, so that's a bill that will probably get at least introduced this year. We'll see if it gets passed. Okay, at this time, I will open up the public comment period, and we have a couple of people wanting to comment. First, we'll have David Berry coming up.
Dave Berry, District 2, along the creek, as you well know, Little Cottonwood Creek. And I have submitted comments. I think they've been circulated to all of you. And I found one more paragraph I disagreed with on the definition of the creek banks. And I just like to take a second to address that particularly. So if the creek comes through the bank and erodes out, let's say 10 feet. The way the statute is written now, which is the comment I put in today, which we've talked about last year at least twice. The new eroded out alcove, whatever you want to call it, becomes the new creek bank. And that just can't be true. It has to be the historical creek bank and not the way it is after the flood. And that's just one of the critical things. And another point I'd just like to highlight is there's references under allowed for residential areas to paragraph 3A. Well, 3A is not really allowed. It's going through an approval process. So it's kind of an oxymoron. It says allowed, but then you got to go through this approval process. And it's either allowed or it's not. If it's an approval process, it's not allowed. I think it should be allowed. And I think that was the intent of the council last year when they gave direction back. And I think that paragraph 3A, at least on residential areas, just should not be there. I'd like to thank again the council and Mike Johnson for meeting with us, and I hope I can meet with him again. I really think the final draft, using all the comments from whoever they may be put together, should be circulated one more time, as I said last time. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate that. Dale Harris.
I'd just like to thank the council for lending a listening ear. Thank Dave Berry. Thank God. I mean, he's out here and he's really changed things, hasn't he? I like him. That guy is great. Some people may have a different opinion, but he's really affected this process for the better. If I had to vote right now for the riparian ordinance, I'd vote no. I'm keeping an open mind. My mind can be changed, but I have several reasons why. And this week, there was one event that kind of crystallized in my mind why I don't like this ordinance. And that was the fire in Maui. The fire in Maui brought home to me, I've lived 30 years in Cottonwood Heights, 18 of them by the creek and next to Crestwood Park. I've been at work when my wife has called and said, there's a fire in the park. The police are in our house telling me I have to go and I can't take anything. I got to go and run for my life. I came home. The fire was 2 stories high, 30 feet off my backyard property line.
Fortunately, we were able to turn our rain birds the opposite direction. Because if you know anything about fires, firemen don't get in front of the fire. They fight it from behind because it's a life-saving thing, right? It's too dangerous. Well, as soon as the captain saw I had rain birds going across that area, they said, okay, we'll come on the other side and we'll help. That's the only thing that stopped my house from being burnt to the ground. And I guarantee you, if my house had gone, the whole neighborhood would go. It would have just been flattened. This is why I don't like this ordinance. This ordinance has a tone that the property owners are the hazard. In every instance, it is pointing out to the property owners, restricting their movements, decreasing their ability to respond to serious and significant hazards like fire and flood. Sticks are a problem. Trees are a problem. I've lived 18 years there. The biomass flourishes. If you do nothing, it grows like crazy. It must be managed. It's a gigantic fuel source. Nobody's doing anything about it. We will rue the day if Cottonwood Heights burns to the ground in those areas because we did nothing. This ordinance does not address flood or fire anywhere, the two biggest hazards that are facing us. Is that ridiculous or what? Seriously? You've heard it here now. You've heard it from me. This is a warning. Those are the hazards that are out there. They must be addressed in this ordinance. If we freeze the ability of residents to manage riverbanks and associated properties, if we mandate that the biomass should be replaced at least 1-to-1 or 2-to-1 or 4-to-1, we're doing exactly the opposite sometimes what we should be doing. I'm concerned that passage of this ordinance in its current state will actually result in the opposite effect. It will create more hazard. That's all I have to say. I have other bones to pick, but that's number one on my list. I'll be back for more later.
Thank you, Dale. Mark Johnson.
Like to thank the city council for allowing us to provide our input today, and I'd like to thank Scott Bracken for going down to my property several months ago, and also my neighbors, and helping to get a visual of what we're looking at down there. And I'm also like to thank Mike Johnson and the others that have been putting the effort into making this a more workable, doable solution. I guess if I just found out about this meeting just barely, and so I haven't had a whole lot of time to prepare, but just to read through what I see, it looks to me like, and I think Dave Barry alluded to this, is that there are still statements in this text that make it so that if we wanted, so I'm a private homeowner, a single resident, and if we wanted to change, if we wanted to knock down our house and put a new house on, our house was built in the 70s. Most of our neighbors are modern. If we wanted to update our house, we would have to go through an approval process because it wouldn't be an automatic. Even more so if we decided that we needed to move, which we don't want to, but if we did, the dynamics of selling a house are that you have potential buyers and they're all interested in wanting to, maybe make an offer before somebody else can. But if their offer is in their mind contingent that they want to be able to put their home on it, and if it's going to have to go through some approval process down the road, and that's an uncertainty, it just puts a pall on the whole idea of how you can sell your home. When I look at the language on here, it talks about that it's for the good of the community, which I'm all in favor for. And it's for aesthetics, and it's for access and enjoyment for the community. But I know it was a couple of years ago, there was some sort of an effort to maybe put a walking trail. So I live on Little Cottonwood Creek. It's not Big Cottonwood. Little Cottonwood is much different than Big Cottonwood, and I don't see any way that you could have a walking trail along there. But it puts these rights of the community over the homeowner rights. I think that there needs to be a clause in there that it cannot reduce the homeowner rights. If it does, then it basically the city is taking some of the private property away from us for the city's purposes, which is similar to what would happen with like putting an airport, trying to expand an airport or something. You got eminent domain issues. And I think if the city wants that, then they should be willing to pay us for what it's worth. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Tim, you said you have somebody to submit into comment.
Yes, I do. There were 3 individuals that sent information in writing. I forwarded it to the council, and for the record, they're part of the record. One of the comments came from Alan Packer regarding the SLEDS ordinance, another from Mr. Johnson, Mark Johnson as well. And then Jennifer Falstead Shaw also provided comments. So they've been all submitted for the public's understanding to the city council, all of the comments, and they're part of the record of this meeting as part of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. So with that, I'll close the public comment period for item 5.1. We'll move to item 6, specifically 6.1, which is our monthly financial report from our Finance and Administrative Services Director, Scott Jurgis.
All right. So this is basically our preliminary year-end financial update for the year that ended on June 30th of 2023. So our property tax, it doesn't make sense to show your property tax month to month because pretty much it all comes in November and December of every year. So annually, though, it makes sense to show you. So you can see our property tax stays pretty stagnant. There's a little bit of a bump in 2013, and that really is catching up on delinquent taxes from this little dip in 2010 and 11 area. But if you were to smooth that out, it's pretty minuscule, the actual growth that we receive year over year when we don't do property tax increases. For our 2019 fiscal year or our 2018 calendar year, there was a property tax increase, and that's what accounts for this jump here. And then you can see that our taxes are pretty flat during that time frame. We probably average somewhere in the realm of $50,000 of net property tax increase, and that comes from in the form of new taxes from new structures or expanding a structure or what have you in the city during that time. The 2023 budget was $8,184,000, and we collected $8,185,000. So I'd say that was pretty close to where we needed to be on that one. And just a note, our budget for the next year, we added $50,000 to it, and it's $8,224,000 for our budget for the current year that we're in, the next budget year from what we're reviewing right here. Our sales tax, which is one of our more volatile taxes that we implement, has been going up from 2020 to 2021. It went up a huge amount of money. It continued to go up, went up another quite large sum, about $850,000 from 2021 to 2022. We are still waiting for our June sales tax revenues to hit us. We're sitting about $347,000 ahead of 2022. So if you took and added $347,000 to where we are here, that would push us in the $9.1 million range on our budget, which is $8.8 million. So we'll wait and see what that actually ends up being. And as a note, our budget for the current year that we're in is $9.5 million. So that kind of gives some outline to that. Before I move on, is there any questions on sales tax?
Okay, so you're not expecting that it's going to exceed the 2022 number?
Yeah, I would say we're pretty safe saying that we,
June amount is usually, looks like.
yeah, we're usually in the $700,000 range. you know,
We have a good
maybe.
chance that 9.5.
Yeah. Yeah, it will definitely be over. When we were projecting this earlier on, we projected 9.2 million. I would say we'll be probably between 9.1 and 9.3 million net ending, on the year. It's hard to really pin that down because it can fluctuate. It can fluctuate because somebody's late filing. It can fluctuate because people are early filing, and those things are totally out of our control. So this is our county option highway transportation sales tax that was implemented back in, I think 2020 was our first year. And you can see that this is pretty volatile as well. Last year we received $780,000 in taxes. Currently, we're sitting at $722,000, and that's about $19,000 ahead of last year. That would put us somewhere in the $800,000 range of collection this year. Again, that amount should come in about a week or so from now. Could be at the end of this week, could be at the beginning of next week. Our budget was 650,000, and we have moved that budget up to 800,000 in the current budget year that we're in. Our transient room tax. So this didn't used to be a major source of revenue for the city. We would receive, under $50,000 for many years. And then we created another hotel up here just off of the Canyon Center area. And that has drastically increased our revenues. Last year, we received $144,000. This year, we're about $34,000 ahead of last year when we've received $166,000 year to date. I would figure we'll probably be in the $175,000 range when we finalize that. Again, we'll receive that when same time we receive our sales taxes. And for the next budget year, we have budgeted $175,000 to match that a little bit closer to what we're going to receive. Energy tax. Energy tax again comes by way of either gas, natural gas, or power that's sold within our city. So as those entities change their rate structures, not our tax rate, but the rate structure in terms of what they're doing, if there's a rate increase, that has a positive effect on our sales tax that we created because the base goes up, therefore we collect a little bit more revenue. And we have seen a little bit of revenue increase from 2020 on out. And some of that is definitely due to some rate adjustments that the energy companies have been putting in place. Last year, we received just under $2.2 million. This year to date, it's hard to get that, and that one didn't want to go in there very good. But anyhow, we're a little over $2.5 million year to date. We're $381,000 ahead of what was collected last year. And another note on that too is extremes in temperature can affect this as well. As it gets very hot or very cold, then the amount of energy that's utilized can be increased as a result of that too. So that's something to keep in mind there. We had budgeted $2.2 million and we had upped that to $2.3 million, again, based on last year's receipts. So we could be a little bit behind in terms of what we've budgeted. We don't get a lot of details on exactly why this is, the information from the energy companies, but we could potentially address this in a budget adjustment or just watch it and project it going forward and readdress it as we set the budget in a future fiscal year. Our cable TV tax. So this tax stays very stable, 323,000, 313,000, 322,000, and we're 8,000 behind what was collected in 2022. So if that held true to the end of the year, we'd be somewhere in the $315,000 range. And so I think that's probably a reasonable estimate. These taxes come in quarterly. And our budget for the next year is 300,000. So that's pretty close to what we're going to be probably collecting this year. Our Class C roads funds come by a cents per gallon fuel tax. And so that comes in basically based on the quantity of fuel that's sold and then distributed through the state. So we have seen increases in this. We were collecting, 1.2 to 1.3 million dollars in 2021 and 22. We saw in 2021 and 2020 is when we were collecting that. In 2022, which is basically when we saw the restrictions on the pandemic going away, we saw a big spike in the amount that we were collecting, and it went up to 1.4 million. And we're about 1.45 million to date, which is $40,000 ahead of what we were last year. So that puts us maybe in the $1.5 million range of net collections by the time we receive everything. So we'll wait and see kind of what's going on with that. And I hope my number's right there, because it looks kind of funny, my math. Maybe I did something wrong. But anyhow, our budget next year is $1.4 million. And I think that's a better representation of where we'll be in terms of our overall collections on that. Our overall expense trend, expenses are largely driven by salary costs as we do salary increases, whether it's cost of living or merit or what have you. And we have had larger cost of living type increases in the past several years, somewhat tied to or matching to the consumer price index. And I think that that's kind of what's generally been seen in the community as well. And going forward, we spent just under $19 million in general fund expenditures. This is direct expenditures, not transfers out. And this year we're sitting at $20,214,000. That's about $1.3 million ahead of our prior year spending. And if you look at the budgets, that's almost matches to what the budget increase was year over year in those different years. Going into, and that's against a budget of $20,459,000. So we're a little bit under our budget, which we need to be. Going into our next year's budget, we're sitting at $21,575,000. So just about $1 million net increase in our budget. Again, we've gone through all that as we set the budget. But that's what we're seeing. No surprises in terms of what we've gone over to date. It's still not finalized. There will be a few more expenditures trickling through. There will still be some more revenues trickling through. But we should, in the next, I'll say 2 weeks, have things pretty finalized and be able to start going through and doing some real analysis on it and updating our 5-year plan. And these aren't audited yet. Our auditors are coming at the end of September. And then we'll possibly have a few little things that we have to change here and there as we talk to the auditors and go through some things. But we'll be able to give you some good preliminary numbers with the 5-year plan starting. I'll probably start that process in about 2 weeks from now, because then we'll have our data pretty solid at that point in time. Are there any questions related to any of the finance items?
I think so. Thank you, Scott. We appreciate your expertise and mention to our city that I don't know how many years in a row you've won budgeting processes awards, but we're looking forward to one more, right?
About 13.
13 years in a row.
Yeah.
Thank you for all you do to keep us financially sound. Okay, our next item is our quarterly police report, and our assistant to the chief, Candy Terry, is going to do that for us tonight.
Evening. Yeah, okay. All right, thank you. Alex is helping me out. Struggled with my computer today, so that's what we're doing. All right, so for calls for service in the month of July, we had, sorry, I gotta look down here. 1,520, and we had 275 on-view calls for the officers. For our calls for service for District 1 had 611, District 2 had 231, District 3 had 298, and District 4 had 207. Our overall response times for July, we are maintaining for officer arrival time right around the 4-5 minute mark. We did have a few calls in response for response 3 priority that took a little bit more time, so that's why that one's at 9 minutes. But that's just it does not happen very often, so.
Abnormality.
There you go. Thank you. My brain is tired. I apologize. Our UCR crime stats for July, we did have 9 assaults, 4 burglary, 39 theft, and 4 stolen autos. We are down from last year, which is what we like to see. In July, we did have 78 arrests and 4 juvenile arrests.
Summertime, huh?
Sorry?
Summertime.
Yes, unfortunately, I think the juveniles will be going back up starting in 2 weeks. So traffic citations, we did have 156. We had 113 warnings and 7 DUIs last month. Here are the citations issued by district. 117 for District 1, 16 in District 2, 27 in District 3, and District 4 had 25. We had 31 accidents, property damage accidents last month, and we had 6 injury accidents. And this is our animal control and code enforcement. These are their calls for service and how many citations that they issued last month. We did have 1 attended death and 2 unattended deaths last month. And then this is our review for the last 3 months. Everything is kind of staying right within where July was as well. So nothing showing any abnormalities. Thank you, Chief.
What is an on-view call?
On view is where the officer does their stop, gets out and does a ped stop, goes out and does the active.
It's a non-dispatch call, so they're driving down Bengal and see some guy smoking marijuana in the median, then it's not a dispatch call, that's a non-view case and that's how it's logged.
Here's the heat map for all of the property crimes within Cottonwood Heights for July. Break it down into District 1. District 2. District 3. And District 4. And then this is a heat map of all of our citations issued within the city. Kind of shows you where they're spread out. And then our safety message this month is back to school. School is starting next week for all of the schools around the area. Just watch out for kiddos. Make sure you're stopping for the buses and slow down in the school zones is all we ask of the residents, please. It's very important. And don't pass school buses, please. Also, Saturday, we had our wonderful autism event. Councilman Newell and Councilman Bracken spoke about it. I wanted to thank the mayor, the council, city manager, UFA for coming out and supporting us with the Autism Council of Utah. We had a great event. We had lots of positive feedback. This was our 2nd year. We will look forward to doing it again next year, and it will just continue to grow. So we had a wonderful time, and thank you for your support. We do appreciate it. And it was a very well attended event. So did you have any questions?
I've got one question regarding speeding tickets. Chief, what type of revenue are we looking at annually? What type of revenue does that bring in?
Scott might know the numbers better than I do, but I can tell you it's not what you think. People think that it generates a lot of revenue to the city. It generates very little. Most of it goes to the court and the cost of the court. The city sees very little off a speeding ticket. What's the average return on speeding ticket? $80 or something? Is that?
Yeah, I don't know on the
Is that so?
individual tickets, but I know on the justice court, it costs us about $50,000 to $80,000 more than the revenues brought in from all tickets from it. So it's not a moneymaker for the city in any way.
Good incentive to slow down. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Candy.
Mayor?
Yes.
I just want to mention it. It's just amazing and wonderful to see Chief Russo in an apron flipping hamburgers at that event. And he's very, very good at what he does, both as a police chief, but also in cooking those hamburgers.
You know, it's genetic. If you've ever been to Crown Burgers or Paulo or Astro, you know that it's in our blood. And
Well, thank you, Candy, and thank you, Chief. We are blessed to have your leadership in our city and for all that the police do to protect us. So thank you. We have two legislative items to consider tonight as a council, beginning with item 7.1, which is consideration of resolution 2023-44, approving and ratifying a bid and awarding a construction contract for the storm drain access restoration project. We discussed this item earlier in our work session. Are there any other questions or comments from the council? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve resolution 2023-44.
I'll make that motion to approve resolution 2023-44.
I'll second.
A motion to approve from Councilmember Newell and a second from Councilmember Holton. Final questions, comments? Now call for the vote. Councilmember Holton,
Yes.
Councilmember Bracken,
Yes.
Councilmember Newell,
Yes.
Councilmember Burrell.
Yes.
And I will vote yes. Item 7.2 is a consideration of resolution 2023-45, awarding a retiring police officer his badge and approving his purchase of a police firearm. We also had the opportunity to discuss this item earlier in our work session. Any other questions or comments from the council?
Well, we appreciate them for their service. And I believe most of his service was this year in Fountain Heights.
I'll add Officer Potter was very involved in our schools as a resource officer and beloved by many. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve resolution 2023-44.
Move that we approve resolution number 45.
Second.
A motion to approve from Councilmember Bracken and a second from Councilmember Holton. Thank you for correcting me to to resolution 45. We'll now call for the vote. Councilmember Bracken,
Yes.
Councilmember Newell,
Yes.
Councilmember Burrell,
Yes.
Councilmember Holton.
Yes.
I will vote yes. Okay, the last item on our agenda for the evening is just approval of our consent calendar, which are the minutes from our meetings on August 1st from our city council, CDRA and city business meeting, city council business meeting. Got to get a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Could I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.